Okay, continuing our tour, we left off somewhere at page 77. So I'm going to go back to my Java file. And one more time, what does this R thing mean? R.layout? Well, R means resources that have been compiled. Okay, we didn't have to compile it. Hey, that's what that Gradle thing is for. It compiled this stuff for us. We don't have to deal with it. And then it says under layout, there should be something called activity main. Okay, now, as I mentioned before, it's sort of saying the machine can figure out which one of these things it actually needs. So the R kind of thing is like a database. So R.layout. And then it'll find the one that you want. Okay, cool. So one more time, I'm going through the resources thing. There's a drawable. And drawable are things like just bitmaps and things. For example, in this particular case, this is the background image for the icon. Okay, because it's just a bitmap thing. Okay, and then the layout, which is where all of these XML files are. By the way, all these, hey, let's just go look at what, how in the world can a background be an XML file? Well, let's go take a peek. And I'm going to go directly to code. And it's basically going to talk about its fill and whether or not it has a pattern, because, it could have some really cool stuff. And design, see how it has a little hatch mark on it? And the hatch mark is kind of fading out towards the edges. That's an awful lot of cool visual effects that's going on there. So yeah, this little cool thing is kind of neat. Anyway, so it's all done with an XML file. Okay, the bitmap, this is where the bitmaps are, and because we could have lots of different ones, because our screen resolution could change. So we don't just have one icon out there. We have a sample icon for high definition and medium and extra high and extra high and extra high definition, right? So if you have high number of density of pixels, you've got like a 3000 by 4000, screen. If you just had a tiny little icon and it zoomed it out, it's going to look kind of fuzzy. So they produced 6 different kinds, well, actually 5 different kinds of bitmaps for you to choose from. Isn't that pretty cool? Okay, and again, the @ thing makes it so all you have to do is ask for IC Launcher Round. You don't have to tell it, oh, but my screen is high def, so I want to use that one. No. The @ sign basically says, I'll figure it out for you, which is kind of cool. Okay. Under values, we're going to have things like colors and strings. I'm not sure how many colors we got here. So they have, purple and teal and black and white. Okay, dude, whatever. And that's a sample of what they're going to look like. That's from the theme. And strings. Strings are kind of strange because later on we're going to be talking about this in a little bit more detail. But you could have it so that all of the places where you type text while you're coding could be stored here in an XML file rather than hard-coded inside your Java. Okay, now that's a little weird, and I'm just going to mention it now, and I promise we're going to come back and talk about it a little bit later. Well, no, I won't. I'll talk about it now, doggone it. The idea is, inside my Java, I'm going to go back to my Java guy. So here's my Java guy. Remember how we had something in here where we did a toast? Remember that guy? So if I say toast dot, and then make text, and then the context is just going to be this, and then what it is I'm actually going to say, and I'm going to say hello, and then whether or not okay, I tell you what, well, doggone it, the duration is going to be the short duration. Actually, it wants that to be a thing, doesn't it? Doggone it. It's kind of toast dot long. Okay, cool. And then I did a show like that. Cool. All right. Well, see, this is hard-coded text. And what I could have done is put this hello actually inside my strings. Okay? Now you might think, well, that's a hell of a lot of work to do that. Well, you're kind of sort of right. But strings I can pull out and send off to a translator and say, Mr. Translator, will you translate this into French, German, Lithuanian, Russian, whatever. And they don't have to see your source code at all. Now, if I didn't do that, I would have to send them your source code. Wow. Does that make sense? I send them my source code and say, please translate everything you see in there? Not if you're a money-making organization. You don't send your source code to complete strangers, right? That don't make any sense. So I need some way to pull all of the text out so I can send them just this one XML file and have them do the translation. They send it back to you in the mail. You pop it in and presto changeo, now your application works in German. Okay? So that's the reason why you'd want to do this. Now, obviously, we're not going to do that here in class, but I do want you to get in the mood of doing this, because when I ask in an assignment to use all the best practices, that includes not having any hard-coded strings. Okay, just saying. Okay. All right, so we're going to start over with a brand new template. Okay, so this time we're going to do one called Basic Activity. So how do we close this guy off? Well, I went to here and I said Close Project, and then I got it. And then I go in here and I say I want a new project. And this time I'm going to, instead of using I'm going to hit the Basic Activity one. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit the button, and this time I'm going to call this one Chapter 03B, because we already had one. It was A. Okay, wait for it to come up. Okay, I think this one is pretty much well done. I'm going to go ahead and launch this to see what it looks like, because there's a thing called a fragment and a bunch of other weird stuff. So let's just go see how it works first. So I'm going to hit run. Okay, finally. All right. So this is the thing that has a button, and then it says hello first fragment, and I click next, and it brings me to a new fragment, a new screen, and then I can go back to the old screen. So that's basically just how to have two different screens popping up at the same time. Okay, it's not a very exciting application, but it's kind of cool. This thing is called a floating button, a FAB, floating action button. And it's kind of cool because it'll stay on the screen like when we transition from one to the other. You know, like if you change the background or something, the button stays there, so it's a floating action button, kind of cool. Okay, now there's a bunch of stuff in the book that talks about, you know, what to do next. I'm not going to do that. That's for you to do. But there's an entire exercise in the book on how to go in and tweak this thing. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip all that and go to page 93 where we talk about the emulator. See this little bar there? Let's go through what all that means. Okay, so I have a doodad here. Oh, well, it doesn't say much. So the off switch, that's kind of simple. I rarely turn my device off like that. Volume, whether or not we're rotating, whether to take a screenshot, zooming in. And then these are the normal buttons. Let me get back to my emulator guy. So sometimes these little buttons here may be obscured, and so you might have to use these. So let's just talk about what the buttons are. All right. This is basically the home button. If I do that, boink, it's going to bring me back to my home. Okay. If I do this, this is going to be like the history or our running apps button. All right. So that's going to bring me back to where I left off. This is the back button, which basically is going to essentially close my application. Okay. Now, well, because I had clicked on this several times. But I just keep going back. And finally, when I get to the end, trust me, when I get to the end. Finally, it's going to close off the entire application. So the application is no longer running now because I backed it out. Okay, I hit back over and over and over and over and over until it finally ended up. So let's talk about, again, how to operate. If you've never done this before, it's a little weird. So if I just drag from the top, which means I just hold on to the button and just kind of drag it, we need to enable the auto rotate. Okay, that's kind of cool. I'm going to scroll this guy back up. If I want to see all the apps, I'm going to scroll from the bottom. And I've been working a while, so I've got like assignments and chapters. And so one of these is the one we've just been working on. It's I can't see what it is. It's probably that one. Yeah. Okay. So when it installed these applications, okay, now I'm at the app view. How do I get back to the normal view? Well, just hit the back button again. And you can keep hitting back long enough, and you'll end up back to where you're supposed to be. Okay? So how do you uninstall an app? Well, I typically don't uninstall the app here inside my emulator. I just don't have much of a need to. But if you wanted to, you could do one of these things and do a long press. You know, click on this guy, and you could go in and get some more information about it, and you could kill it off and uninstall it and do all those things. So a long press, hold on to the guy, let it do its thing. Okay, I typically don't do that, but I just wanted to show you how that works. Okay, so what you're supposed to have learned for this is what these three buttons mean. That's the home button, that's the backup button, that's show me all running apps button, and there could be quite a lot. I mean, I've been here playing for days, so there could be an awful lot of stuff in here. And then home. Cool? All right. All right, so that's about it for Chapter 3, and just stay tuned, and we'll do on Chapter 4. Okay, so Chapter 4 starts on page 101. So Chapter 4 is about getting started with layouts and this concept called material design. Now, if you're a designer, you're going to eat this up. If you're a programmer, you're going to be going, huh? That's okay. So there are lots of choices when we laid out our application. There's a thing called a linear layout, which means things just kind of go in sequence. A constraint layout, which is the two that we've been using so far. This app, for example, has a constraint to it. And the previous examples that we did with the empty had a constraint to it. If I end up going to any one of the activities, it's going to tell me at the top that we're using a, well, okay, that's a coordinator. Ha ha ha. Okay, one of these. There you go. That's the constraint layout. And the constraint layout means I want to put it exactly right here. Now, that's not necessarily the best approach. Typically, you don't write applications using a constraint layout because you don't know how big the screen is going to be, and you don't know if they're taking their phone and turned it sideways or not. So if you said, you know, I wanted it 300 over and 300, you know, 300 from the top and 300 from the left. Okay, that might look good while it's in the portrait mode. But when it's in the landscape mode, you might not be able to see it at all. So that's not normally the way we do business. So which is a little weird because the first two templates we've been using so far, the empty one and the basic one, use constraint types, which we don't particularly recommend. But anyway, there's basically, we're going to use three different types. Okay, we're going to use a linear one here in just a minute, a constraint one, which we've always used, and then the other one called a table constraint, which is for those things that you kind of want to be in rows and columns. Okay, so what's the point? I mean, you told me that there's three different constraint types, but why? What's the point? Well, the idea is the Android folk don't know how big your screen is. It could be a watch, right? Or it could be a 97-inch TV. They don't know. So they can't tell you exactly where things should be. You're going to have to trust the operating system to put things in the most reasonable spot based upon what you think the thing is going to run on. So you'd rarely go in and tell it precisely where you want things. That's not normally the case. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, so you guys know how this works.